Mic check. Thank you very much. Facebook app, YouTube, good. All right, we'll start in 1 minute. Okay, I see YouTube live, TikTok. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Start in a minute. Thank you, David. In the Philippines. Baruch. All right, Rosalie, nice to see you. Hannah. Caesar. Daniel. School Mitzvot. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Baruch, good to see you. Thank you for making the video. I haven't watched it yet, but I'll watch it later. All right, let's get started. בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים, שבוע טוב, שבוע מבורך. The alarm goes off. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the רפואה שלמה and הצלחה רבה for מורנו ורבנו הרב אפרים בן שולמית, רבנית שרה בת ענת, טליה בת Sarah. Also there is a I forget another name, but Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Avi Mori David ben Nesria, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, Rav Meir Yaakov ben Rachel, and Rachel bat Jora. הקדוש ברוך הוא יברך אותם רפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש, רפואת הגוף, חיים ארוכים, שלמים, מלאים תורה, מצוות וגמילות חסדים. So tonight, Baruch Hashem, we're going to continue our series of the Torah Chasidut. But before we start, I want to let you guys know tonight is you're in for a surprise. There's a chidush of all chidushim that literally when you learn it, it shocks your mind a little bit. Just you have to digest it. You have to learn it a few times just to realize that this is true and not a dream. Because if I tell you in the beginning what it is, you're going to go crazy. So I'll tell you right in the beginning. There is a way that filthy thoughts can bring Kedusha. Now, helping countless people over the years with the matters of doing tshuva, for wasting seed, for immorality, men, women, young, old, all types of people, married, single. One of the main things that Baruch Hashem makes it work and effective in helping people transform their lives and doing real complete tshuva is not only the continuous shurim about the issue that we've made over the years, the film, and well over 100 or 200 shurim about the topic, but also the continuous guidance, the stuff that we deal with behind the scenes when you guys send me questions and the different issues that you're dealing with, and the different problems, and Baruch Hashem, we've succeeded in guiding countless people to do tshuva. And one of the common denominators among all people that are serious about tshuva is trying to fix their mind, because they got so used to doing certain things, thinking about certain things, watching certain things, that now it's natural for them to think about filth. So how do you get rid of that filth? And I've heard that cry so many times, why is Hashem doing this to me? How do I get rid of all these bad thoughts? Well, Rabotai, you're in for a surprise, and I've told some of you over the years, privately, but tonight it's going to be part of the Tzeitil Katan to understand how the thoughts of filth can actually bring Kedusha. But before we get into that, I want to remind everybody, we are in our last week before Rosh Hashanah. This is the Yom Din Gadol. This is the big Bet Din in Shamayim, Paskins. Whether one lives or dies, one becomes wealthy or poor, one makes money, loses money, gets married, stays single, has kids, stays without them, healthy, sick, all of these things are going to be decided by Bezrat Hashem next week. And one of the extraordinary ways that a person can actually help themselves get a better judgment is by doing as many mitzvot to help Am Yisrael as possible, not only helping them materially, but also helping them in a way of doing kiruv. And our campaign has the opportunity of doing both of those, because not only is one going to be able to help us feed over 10,000 Jews in Eretz Yisrael during these holidays, but also you'll be able to get your name into one of our books that's going to be published later this year if you're one of the larger donors. There are multiple options there. Of course, you could donate smaller amounts, whatever you could afford, but if you are able financially to donate the larger amount, 8,000, 17,000, these will give you other opportunities. And I understand that people love their money and they love it when it's on the screen and when they can look at it and imagine all the things that you can do with it. Well, this is what money is for. Money is for doing mitzvot. That's the purpose of money. And if a person uses it wisely, they'll be able to take that money with them, or the outcome of that money with them, to Olam Haba. But if they continue harboring and pretty much keeping their money as a prisoner in their banks, then unfortunately, if the Bet Din in Shamayim decides that a person is not going to live another year, like unfortunately many people have not lived to see the end of this year, then the reality is that money stays and you can't take it with you. It's important for people to understand what money is for. Money is for mitzvot. It's not for just simply buying more toys. So if anyone wants to donate and be generous, go to bhyk.org, bhyk.org. bhrh.org also should work by now for most people, but it's the same website. And you could certainly donate over there. If you want to send a check, you could actually send a check by sending me simply the picture of it to my WhatsApp or my email, and we could deposit it that way, as long as you take a picture of both the front and the back of the check on a dark background. You could also wire the money if you prefer. I know that some of you that are from overseas prefer to do wire transfers, so by all means you can do that. Second thing is, this is the last week that we're going to be doing the Kiruv store for a while, because I'll be away for the holiday and of course celebrating the holiday. So anyone that wants to order free books and USBs to distribute in their communities, this next couple of days are going to be the last opportunity to do so. We'll get all the orders out this week of whatever we have, but after that there's going to be a break in the Kiruv store for a little while until after the holidays, B'ezrat Hashem. So go to kiruvstore.org, order whatever you want. It's all free. We even pay for the shipping and distribute it in your community during this high holidays. Last but not least, Baruch Hashem, many of you have tried out the Rabbi AI app that we have, either on our B'ezrat Hashem app or just independently. You just downloaded the Rabbi AI app. And I've seen extraordinary results. People love the thing. I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And Baruch Hashem for that, because it shows that our Mesirut Nefesh of myself, my team, and everybody that's involved in it, Baruch Hashem has paid off. Over a decade worth of work is now available to you on a silver platter. Now, of course, as I said last week, there's bugs and there's different issues we have to fix. From time to time we find them out, but so far in the last several days since we launched it, we were able to fix everything we've encountered so far pretty quickly. Any of you that haven't tried it out yet or haven't subscribed, try it out. It's worth the money. It's only $15 for the subscription. And some of you didn't realize that you can subscribe. Some people thought that it's only 5 questions and then you're finished. No, the 5 questions is simply a free trial. After that, you subscribe for a small fee. That's pretty much it. And if you wanna show somebody else that you love them, you buy them a subscription also. And for the subscription you buy for somebody else, you could actually use that money as maaser money. For yourself, you can't use maaser money simply because you're actually getting something for it. And it's obviously it costs a ton of money to continue this program for developers, and so on, whatever. All this stuff costs a lot of money. I'm not even sure if there's any profit in the $15, to be honest with you. We'll actually have to wait and see in the next couple of months if there's even a few dollars left of profit. But the point is to make Torah easily available to you guys with legitimate sources, with legitimate information. And Baruch Hashem, the people that have tried it out are telling me this is the greatest thing that the world has ever seen in the Torah, and all types of wonderful compliments to it. So I can assure you that it really is that good. It really is that good, Baruch Hashem, and it's only going to get better, Be'ezrat Hashem. So with that being said, We're going to get into it. We're going to find out how filthy thoughts, Ribono Shel Olam, it's the worst thing in the world. Horrible thoughts that you don't want to have, thoughts that you shouldn't have, thoughts that you have to fight against, can actually bring Kedusha to the world. That's what the Tzeitil Katan is going to uncover for us through his words as well as the words of Rabbeinu Bechaye and some of the other sages like the Rambam, some of the Lekutei Maharan, Rabbi Nachman of Breslev, the Gemara, and of course some Sifrei Kabbalah. Now, Rabotai Karim, we don't delve into the world of Kabbalah very often. This series has made it almost like a weekly thing, where the holy words of the Rabbi Elimelech of Lidzhinsk require us to delve into into no man's land, into a place where only Torah scholars, rest. But Baruch Hashem, that we merit it, that we see it, and that we can learn certain parts of it together, Be'ezrat Hashem, because it is relevant, it is important for all of us to understand how to apply this small note that's enormous information in it to our day-to-day lives. So the 6th chapter of the Tzeitil Katan builds upon what we already said in the last couple of chapters about anyone that has bad character traits that are, simply within them, anger, stinginess, lust, whatever it is that's within a person, wants to get rid of them. They could say the lachash that we mentioned last week, which is the 7 Canaanite nations, the Aknaania, Chitia, Emori, Aprizia, Chivia, Yevusiva, Girashi, but just saying them by themselves is not enough. You have to know what you're actually saying, why you're saying those names, and for that you'll have to go to the last couple of lectures. Tonight he's going to give us another sort of a lachash, but really more than that. He's giving us another verse, he's giving us another lachash, but really he's going to give us something that we have to build upon. And the Tzeitil Katan says as follows: if you have an illicit thought, God forbid, you should say several times the verse in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verse 10, what we read last week. You shall beware of everything evil. V'nishmarta mikol davar ra. Say it several times. And at that moment, you should think about Chazal's teachings, the sages' teachings, that man should avoid illicit thoughts by day so as not to come to impurity at night. Do not let the impure thought dwell in your mind, God forbid, so as not to defile the supernal intellect. These are his thoughts, these are his writings, but of course the average person says, what's new here? A whole world of new. Well, first and foremost, we have to see, what is he saying? What is he saying here? First, he's telling us illicit thoughts of immorality, thoughts of the filth that people see, the immodesty, where women are walking around without arms and without legs, watching all types of television, watching all types of movies, billboards, all the garbage that's out there. This is not something you want in your mind. But what can you do if you're in the business world? You go to work every day and your customers show up that way. Your co-workers show up that way. Your boss shows up that way. People in the street show up that way. You're constantly encountering it. You're living in the world. Now, you're not going to become Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and live in a cave. Okay, because even Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Hashem told him to get out of the cave after 12 years. So, in the end, he had to come back for another year, but it's a different story. Point being is that you have to learn how to live in the world. With all of this immorality, with all of the immodesty, with all of the stuff that's there, you have to learn how to live in the world. And yet, not allow yourself to have those inappropriate thoughts. Never thinking about a woman that's not your wife, never thinking about an immodest woman, never thinking about an immodest man. For whatever reason or another, women forgot to watch my Tikkun Abrit film, or perhaps they did watch it, but they thought it only applies to their husband, their kids, maybe their friend, but not themselves. There is no permission whatsoever for a woman to look at immodest guys. This is what the Psak Halacha is. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein talks about it, Rav Ovadia Yosef talks about it, and many Chachamim talk about it in the Gemara itself. There's no permission whatsoever for a woman to look at men that are not her husband just for enjoyment. In fact, one of the Chachamim said when two women were asked for directions by Shaul HaMelech, they took their time to answer him. And one of the Chachamim says, why did they take their time? So he said, perhaps they enjoyed how beautiful Shaul HaMelech was. One of the other sages took offense to this. He goes, what? What do you think? Bnot Israel are zonot? They're just looking at men that are not their husband? Just because he's a handsome guy? And of course, he defended it and he showed that no, it's not what I meant. We meant something else. Point is that to teach the law, women are not allowed to look at other men just because they're good looking. You want to look at somebody? Look at your husband. Look at your beautiful kids. The end. This is what a woman is supposed to look at. You have to protect your eyes. Now again, the issues of looking is not the same for women as it is for men, but it's certainly no free ticket to look at whatever you want whenever you want. There is no such thing like that. And what the Tzeitil Katan is telling us, when a person looks, it's going to create a certain image. And that image is not going to leave their mind. This is the reason why you should not watch television with all types of programming on it, with movies, with all types of people that are simply forget their clothes at home. This is why you should never have these things. I told people in a lecture in New York maybe 10 years ago, any woman that allows her husband to watch movies and television in her house is simply married to a man that's also with other women. He's comparing to her. Why? Because he's watching programs on TV, he's watching shows, everyone on TV is good looking, and he's constantly comparing his wife to everybody else on TV. She's sitting there watching TV next to him, she's in her robe, she's comfortable, she's ready to go to sleep, and he's comparing everybody that's looking their best next to his wife that's in her robe, that's about to go to sleep. And then she's surprised that he doesn't want to come home the next day. A woman that allows her husband to watch TV is a woman that is simply allowing her husband to look at other women. And a woman like that is unfortunately not a smart one. Same concept with a woman that watches TV herself. She will never be happy with her marriage. Why? Because she will constantly compare her husband to whoever she's watching on TV. Some superhero jumping buildings, robbing cars, driving fancy cars. She's going to constantly compare her plumber husband, her construction driver husband, to this superhero James Bond on TV. And then she's surprised why there's no shlom bayit. These types of things poison the mind. Of course, by TV, needless to say, internet, needless to say, all the other things that provide this poisonous media to your mind. And the Tzeitil Katan is telling us is that these will create illicit thoughts, God forbid. And when they come, because you have watched it before, we heard the sages say what they say, me repeat it, and now you're going to stop because you don't want this garbage in your mind anymore. Enough fights in the house. Enough nights that the husband doesn't want to come home. Enough nights that the wife doesn't want to come home. Enough problems with the kids who don't want to come home because everybody wants to go in all types of places except home. Enough with all of that. You're enough. You want to do tshuva, Baruch Hashem, before Rosh Hashanah, before Yom Kippur. But now what to do with all the garbage that you've accumulated over the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years? What are you going to do with all of it? Says Rabbi Elimelech, you shall beware of everything evil, is what the Torah says. Repeat that over and over. V'nishmarta mikol davara. But why? Why that verse? Because Rabbi Elimelech is first acknowledging the fact that we have two parts to our neshama. There's the part that is connected to Hashem. That's the spiritual part. That's the Torah part. But then there's the part that is animalistic, behemah, physicality. Wants lust, wants materialism, wants food, wants everything physical, like an animal. And each and every moment, a person must wake up the Torah part of their neshama, the spiritual part of their neshama, by one of the verses that is mentioned in the Torah that's connected to the desire that animalistic part of the body wants. Because since it's two parts, when you awaken the behemah part, the animal part, then the behemah rises, becomes stronger, and overpowers the Torah part, the spirituality part, which goes down. As the behemah becomes stronger, it leads to action. He not only thinks like an animal, he acts like an animal. On the other hand, if he watched the shiur and all of the other lectures we've made about the topic over the years, he doesn't want to do that anymore. He doesn't want to be an animal. So he's going to think of some type of verse in the Torah that's connected to the sin. If it's a sin of, let's say, for example, immodesty, then he's going to think of, what's a verse in the Torah that's connected to immodesty? That's in Parashat Ki Titzeh, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, so I shall not see a thing of nakedness among you, and I will not turn my back on you. Meaning that a person doesn't want this immodesty to affect him. He wants to elevate his Torah, his spirituality, his connection to God higher. He thinks about this. That Torah becomes stronger. That neshama becomes stronger and overcomes the animal part. So one or the two happens. Either the animal wins, the behemah, or the Torah wins. At all times. Every moment of the day. Every moment of the day you have to decide whether you're an animal or you're one of the chosen people. You're a person. You have to decide. Now, the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot, page 46a, brings this up. And it says, first, it asks a question about Lashon Hara. Where do we know that in the Torah that it says that there's a warning to not say Lashon Hara, to not be a defamer, to not go to people and make up stories about somebody, such as, he took our money and now he doesn't want to help us. All types of nonsense that people make up in order to serve their own agendas. Where does it say that? So Rabbi Elazar says, it says that you shall not go about and be a gossip monger. Rabbi Natan says, what about, why don't you use the verse, V'nishmarta mikol davara, that you should beware of anything evil. I mean, that's anything. You could apply it to anything. No, says Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. No. V'nishmarta mikol davara, that you should beware of anything evil, seems like it's a general statement that you could apply to Lashon Hara, idolatry, Chilul Shabbat, or anything. But no, it is specifically referring to the issues of immorality. This verse of referring to evil thing is that a man should not think immoral thoughts by day and thereby come to Tum'ah at night. How do we know that? Because if you look at the next verse in the Torah, after this verse, it specifically says, if there will be among you a man who will not be clean because of nocturnal emission. And this, the Torah is teaching us, this is the evil davar. This evil davar that you did, this evil thing that you did, led to wasting seed. So therefore we know that this verse, that you should protect yourself from anything evil, is not talking about Lashon Hara, but rather it's specifically talking about don't look at anything immodest, because that will bring the evil to you. And what is the evil? The evil is acts of immorality, wasting seed, and so on. So that's enough, no? Well, no, it's not. Why? Because we want to see more. We love more. Gemara, Masechet Avodah Zarah, page 20, tells us more. Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in the Berita. V'nishmarta mikol davara. There's a verse in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23, verse 10, that says that you shall beware of any evil thing. Same thing, same verse. What is this referring to? Shelo ya'ar'er adam bayom v'yavo lidei tum'ah balayla. This teaches that a person should not think immoral thoughts by day and end up coming to Tumah at night because he watched television and movies and internet and all the filth, and he looked at the pretty girl in his office, and he looked at the cashier, and he looked at this, and he looked at that. That's going to bring him to evil at night. He's going to end up making sins. You shall beware of any evil thing, because that will bring the wasting seed later. Now, the sages expand upon this and say that to transgress this prohibition against evil thought, it's not necessary that a person contemplate about actually committing the sin. As long as the person thinks thoughts that might arouse him and cause him to experience seminal emission, he has thereby transgressed this prohibition, says Rabbi Yonah in Sha'arei Tshuva. And so does the Tanya in chapter 1, in section 11. In fact, even contemplating on his own wife is forbidden under the law if he's not going to fulfill those thoughts, because it can lead to wasting seed. Accordingly, the prohibition of both Bereitot applies. It seems like it applies only to men. It seems like women are not prohibited to gaze at men, or men are also, you're also forbidden from gazing at animals when they're procreating and so on. But says the Torah, yes, this particular verse does. But there's another verse that says, you shall not stray after your eyes. This is what we say in the Shema Yisrael. It says Rav Moshe Feinstein. From there we learn that this particular verse of protecting your eyes is pertaining to both men and women, because it leads to immoral thinking. It leads to filthy thoughts. And these filthy thoughts damage the soul. So, now that we have repeated some of the things we've known, perhaps some new things, we have to build further. The Tzeitin Katan told us that if these evil thoughts, these illicit thoughts, entered your mind, you should say the verse. But after you say the verse, at that moment you should also think about Chazal's teachings, the sages' teachings. Why? Why do you have to do both? Why isn't it like last week's Lachash, where just saying that statement is enough? Well, if you remember correctly, saying the statement by itself was not enough. You had to say the statement, plus you had to know what it meant. Here's the same thing. But why? Why is this extra? It seems like an overkill. First, a person needs to know that when a person looks at the Torah, learns Torah, they have to not compare it to anything else. Why? Because everything else that you're doing for intellectual stimulation or for career purposes or so on is as deep as the things you're seeing, whereas the Torah is as deep as the ocean, or deeper than the ocean. In fact, the Ben Ish Chai says that one of the reasons why the Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin that we initially mentioned that this verse is connected to Lashon Hara, and so does the Yerushalmi Masechet Pe'ah in the Perik Aleph, Halacha Aleph, where it talks about how this verse is also connected to Lashon Hara, is because Lashon Hara is connected to wasting seed. How? The Brit, Milah, and the Brit of the mouth. They're both Brits. And the word for mouth is Peh. Gematria, 85. The word for Brit Milah, is also 85. And Milah not only stands for Brit Milah, the circumcised member, but also Milah, which is word. So the Ben Ish Chai says, if a person only says holy things, they're going to be able to protect their Brit also. Brit Kodesh, don't touch. But if a person says filthy things, lies, curses, gossip, all of those things, it's only a matter of time before they become an immoral person too. And this is why you always see that sometimes when marriages struggle, there's always a common denominator. What? One of the people, either the husband or the wife, are a permanent student of the Satan by saying Lashon Hara on a regular basis. Lashon Hara every day. Just like you're supposed to say Modeh Ani to Hashem every day and Shema Yisrael every day, she says Lashon Hara every day. And then she's surprised that there is problems in the house. The Chidah also tells us, furthermore, that the fact that the learning Talmud, learning the Gemara, is the ultimate defense against beating the Yetzer Hara's wife is not a coincidence. But Talmud is the same Gematria as the Yetzer Hara's wife's. Her name and Talmud, same Gematria. Why? The Talmud is the ultimate weapon. Learning the Talmud deeply, with sweat, with effort, is the ultimate tool to defeat the Satan's wife. Now, when a person sees what the Tzeti L'Katan is saying, say a verse, but then think about the words of the sages, the lectures of Musar. These things are going to help you. So you would think naturally, well, it's either one or the other. Either you watch a shiur, or you say this verse. Since saying the verse is much faster, I'll just say the verse. Wrong. He's saying do both. Why do both? Why do both? Isn't it an overkill? You see, every verse in the Torah must be combined with the oral Torah. Because the written Torah is considered, figuratively speaking, like the male, the husband. Because it doesn't give birth to anything. There's no new verses in the Torah. No matter how much you try, no matter how many missionaries tell you there's something new, there is nothing new under the sun. The 5 books of Moses stays the same. Nothing changes. In fact, the Midrash Kohelet says that the letter Yud came and cried to HaKadosh Baruch Hu about how Shlomo HaMelech, he violated the Torah. Because the Torah says, Lo yarbeh lecha nashim, you should not have many wives, and should not have many horses. How could that be? He used me to do all these things. What's going on? Hashem says, as big as a tzaddik as Shlomo HaMelech was, Shlomo HaMelech was Baal Ruach HaKodesh. Shlomo HaMelech was king of the world. The greatest time that Am Yisrael ever had in the world was when Shlomo HaMelech was king over all of the world. But yet Shlomo HaMelech made these 2 mistakes. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about Shlomo HaMelech, let Shlomo and 1,000 like him die, and not even one Yud, the smallest physical letter in the Hebrew alphabet, will be missing from the Torah. Nothing will ever change from the Torah. He made a mistake, he has to pay for that mistake. There is no such thing as, no big deal. There is no big deal. So now, this Torah that never changes, doesn't give birth to anything new, but in order to understand it, you need the oral Torah. You need the oral Torah. It tells you 12 times in the Torah, Mechaleh Amot Yumat, that if somebody desecrates Shabbat, it's a death penalty. So that means that if somebody's driving on Shabbat, if somebody's turning on and off electricity, if somebody's doing any type of cooking, whatever they're doing business on Shabbat, every second that they are violating Shabbat is a new death penalty from Shemayim. Every second. It's not like a one thing. Every second that they're continuing, it's a new penalty again. It's a new sin. So a person needs to know, how do I keep Shabbat? Now, if you look at the Torah, you're not going to know how to keep Shabbat. Why? Because all of the details of how to keep Shabbat and how not to violate it are in the oral Torah. And therefore, the oral Torah is the female that keeps breeding, that keeps producing more and more new insights, more books, more chidushim. Of course, we have our foundation. That's the Gemara, that's the Mishnah. Then we have, of course, our Shulchan Aruch. We have our Rishonim. We have our Achronim. But the oral Torah continues to expand, continues to grow. There are millions of books already that we have for the last few thousand years. But every Chacham that comes out with a new book, like Be'ezrat Hashem, the books will come out with later this year, that is going to bring new insights, new understandings of things we already have, based on the tradition, not based on new things that we're creating out of thin air. Every Chacham that comes out with the book is an extension of the oral Torah. Every part of it is an extension of the oral Torah, meaning the oral Torah continues to bring new babies to the world. That's why it's the female. In fact, as you know, in the Gemara in Masechet Nida, it talks about how a Jew that's still in his mommy's belly has an angel teaching him the entire Torah. But right before the Jew comes to the world, the angel gives him a little hit on the lip, and the baby comes out, but he doesn't remember all the Torah that he learned. There's been a couple of circumstances, couple of cases, known cases, in recent years, where kids came to the world knowing the entire Torah, meaning the angel apparently did not hit them. One time, there was a kid that Arav Nisimi again saw him with his own eyes. They asked him all types of questions. And as they were saying the question, the kid would say everything. They would say, well, do you know this book? And he would start saying everything that the book says. Better than Rabbi AI. He says everything that the book says. There was another kid, same concept. They asked him questions, all the books. They'd say a page number. He'd say everything on the page. Kids at 3, 4 years old knew everything. And they wanted to check, how far does it go? They continued going from generation. The Gemara, he knew everything. The Mishnah, he knew everything. The Rishonim, he knew everything. The Rambam, he knew everything. The Shulchan Aruch, he knew everything. The Mishnah Berurah, he knew everything. They wanted to know, how far does he go? They went all the way up to the Ben Ishchai, he knew everything. Apparently, just like the Chachamim tell us, all of the oral Torah that we have today was already given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. So there's been a couple of cases where literally kids actually showed what this Gemara says. Now, this Holy Torah has a male and a female. The male that does not breed new babies because the Torah doesn't change, it stays the same, that's the 5 books of Moses. The oral Torah, that continues to breed more. And that's why the Tzeitiv Katan is telling us it's not enough to just say the verse from the written Torah. You have to couple it with the teachings of the sages about that verse. All the teachings about immorality. All the teachings about Kedusha. This is what's going to help you. Especially the teachings that say that a man should not have illicit thoughts by day so as not to come to impurity by night. Meaning all the things that encourage you to clean up your mind, whether by fear or otherwise. The Darkei Tzedek in chapter 73 says that you should remember, he gives a suggestion of how You can do this. Now, of course, what I'm saying is not applicable to most people right now, including frum Jews, but it's certainly something that everyone can do if they practice and they learn. You should remember the 613 commandments in everything that you see. Meaning that you should immediately think about the mitzvah that's connected to anything that you look at. For instance, when you see a human being, you should think, "Ve'afta l'recha kamocha," that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. When you see your friend's money or his house, instead of being jealous like most people are, you should think, "You shall not covet." It's one of the 10 commandments. Or think about the mezuzah that's affixed on his door. Or the mitzvah of making a fence around the roof. Whatever you see, you should immediately bring to mind the mitzvah that's connected to it. This will save you from inappropriate thoughts. It's a brilliant idea. Problem is, it takes a little time to remember all 613 mitzvot to the point where you can apply it to everything in life. Now, the sefer Tzidkat Tzaddik, in chapter 98, which is in the name of the Arizal, meaning the teachings of the Arizal, says that the evil inclination tries to convince you to sin. And when it does, you should say several times out loud the verse that speaks of that prohibition. This will remove your desire, and the inverse of this is true as well concerning mitzvot and good deeds. Same thing what the Tzeitit Katan is saying was already in the Tzidkat Tzaddik. Now, the Noam Elimelech, also by Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhinsk, in Parashat Pinchas, says the reason why these thoughts are not something you want is because every sin creates a klipa, creates evil force. Chas v'shalom. And as long as that evil force is in the world, the person will continue to have the evil thoughts related to that sin. And that's why a person must do tshuva in order to destroy that force from the world. Meaning that having that negative thought and getting to the point of making a sin and then saying, okay, I'm not going to do it again, is not enough. You have to do tshuva for the sin seriously to the point where you're not thinking about it anymore. You're not thinking about that sin as being something joyful. Because so long as you think as that sin as being joyful, as being anything good, you're going to continue having the thoughts. Now, one of the reasons that we've learned in the past of why having inappropriate thoughts is a terrible thing is what the Gemara in Masechet Yoma says in multiple places. The thoughts of sin are worse than the sin. The thoughts of sin are worse than the sin, where the thought doesn't just go away. The thought is something that creates a certain amount of damage, as the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin writes in the sefer Nefesh Chaim, in the fourth shar, that what the Gemara says in Masechet Gittin, in the 5th chapter, about how Titus, Yimach Shimo v'Zichro, tried to desecrate the Bet HaMikdash, where he brought a zonah and he made sins in the Kodesh Kodashim, making it filthy, disgusting. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says, that did not cause any damage in the upper heavens. Anywhere near as much damage is caused by a Jew that thinks about things that are filthy, that are not good, by things that are not modest. Any Jew, let him be 13 years old, thinks about something lo tzanua, creates much greater damage in the upper heavens than what Titus did in the Kodesh Kodashim. The question is why? Why does it cause so much more damage? Now, in the Tikkun Abrit film, we gave an example of how the damage in the mind is much more significant than the damage in the physicality, because the damage in the mind distorts a person's reality, where he starts expecting unrealistic things from his wife, or she expects unrealistic things from a husband. They're constantly comparing each other to people that don't really exist. They're constantly reliving the sin. But there's more. There's much more. In fact, when you look at what the sages said, you'll understand why it's so bad. The sefer Dvash Lepi by the Chida in the 5th chapter, he says that the Torah teaches us in the Gemara that there are 3 partners to every baby: the mother, the father, and Hashem. The father brings the white parts of the baby, such as the bones, the teeth. The mother brings the red parts, all the organs, the blood. Hashem brings the mind and knowledge. This is in essence the soul. Now, there is the conscious, subconscious, and above conscious. I know that most people know what conscious and subconscious is, but rarely is anyone ever talk about of the above conscious. This is part of the Torah, Kabbalistic world. We're not going to delve into that now. But nonetheless, there is a part that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings. And what Hashem brings is all in the mind. Meaning that when a person makes a sin with their body, let's say he's stupid and he touches a woman that's not his wife in an inappropriate place, or she decides that she wants to touch another boy and kiss another boy that's not a husband. This is a physical sin. They're both going to have to suffer for it. Hashem's going to punish them. But the sin ends there. Meaning there is the touch, there is the sin, but it's over. Once they're finished, it's done. They're both going to have to pay for it. Unless they do tshuva. If they do tshuva, Hashem will forgive them. Say, I'm sorry, Hashem. I'll never kiss him, I'll never touch, I'll never do all these things. Fine, Hashem will forgive them. Now's the time to do tshuva for all the stupid things we did. But the problem is that if he sins with the mind, meaning that if he continues to think about this girl, or she continues to think about this guy, or any other guy, or any other girl, whatever it is, that's not something that affects what her mother and father brought to the world. What she did or what he did affected what her mother and father brought to the world. What they contributed to the partnership. The flesh and blood. But when he or she thinks about things that are not modest, they're violating what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them. What's in their mind. And there's nothing holier about a person than his mind. Why? That is the room of Kodesh Kodeshim between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Between her and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's a room that only you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu know about. Which means that when you allow things that are lot sanua, that are not appropriate into your mind, that is a direct rebellion against the Creator himself. Because only he knows about it. therefore, this rebellion creates a much greater damage than even physical touch. This does not mean that physical touch is okay, because a person that permits themselves to do things like that, they're going to end up thinking, meaning they'll get multiple sins. But the point is that if somebody somehow only made a sin and stopped thinking about it forevermore and never repeated it again, then of course he's done, he did tshuva, good. But if he thinks, no, I'll do it, then I won't think about it, he's delusional. Why? Because as long as you keep doing it, obviously that means you're thinking about it. That means that not only is the physical touch a sin, but also what you're thinking about along the way. And what a person has to realize is that these filthy thoughts are called filthy because they are the most disgusting of all creation. And that's why Rabbi Elimelech says, do not let the impure thoughts dwell in your mind, God forbid, so as not to defile the supernal intellect. Meaning that the Torah is well aware that there are going to be times that these things will enter your mind. Don't let them stay there. You have to fight them tooth and nail by doing all types of exercises, mental exercises to remove the filth from your mind. Thoughts of depression, thoughts of immorality, thoughts of anger. All of the negative thoughts must be fought tooth and nail until they exit your mind. Do not let them stay there. Why? They're the filthiest of filthiest. No different, as Rabbi AI gave an example, as if somebody walks around, they're happy. Let's say, for example, they are going to shul in the morning. To go to shul, they're happy, they take a little walk. They're in their brand new clothes, brand new shoes, brand new shirt. Everything's great. And as they're walking and they're whistling, they're having a good time, and all of a sudden they take a step and they realize they just stepped on something moist. And everybody knows what they just stepped on. And of course, as soon as they step on it, they're not whistling anymore. In fact, they're horrified. They're horrified. And the first thing they want to do is run as fast as possible to get this off their shoe. Get this disgusting filth that came from some animal off of their shoe. And of course, as they're running to get this off their shoe, to go to some fountain, to go to some water, to just get it off, what do? Not only do they clean it away, but they make sure that there's no trace of it left. And certainly, they don't rub their fingers into it. They don't go like this, and then they'll try, there's a little makeup perhaps. Maybe it's a little bit of lipstick. Maybe it's going to look good for me. No! They try to get rid of this disgusting filth as far as possible. To some extent, if they could burn their shoe, they would burn it. Why? It's disgusting. Disgusting, especially when it's fresh, especially when it's new. The same goes with filthy thoughts. When they're new thoughts, they're the filthiest. They're the most disgusting. And a person has to get rid of the stuff out of his mind, out of her mind as soon as possible. Why? It's spiritual filth. You have to get rid of it. Do not let even an ounce of it stay in your mind, because it will cause damage. The stench will affect other places. If you walk into that shul with the filth still stuck on your shoe, everyone will notice, even if the shoe looks clean from the top. Is that you? Is that you? And everyone's going to notice that everyone's asking, is that you? Is that you? Except you. What'd you step on something? Would you eat a dead cow? What'd you do here? What'd you do? Oh yeah, no, I stepped on. Well, go, get out of here. Get it out of you. You can't pray here. No, but come on. No, come on. Get out of here. We can't pray with that stench. Get out of here. Yeah, but I've been a member to the shul for 20 years. Okay, member outside. Remember. Member comes from remember. Member outside. Outside with the filth. Outside. Rabotai Karim, when we show up to Rosh Hashanah, when we show up to Yom Kippur, we have to come with clean minds. We have to come with minds that we're doing tshuva and Hashem is going to accept our tshuva because we've done everything we could. We stopped the sin. We committed not to do it again. We gave tzedakah. We were generous when it came to publicizing Torah. We did everything we possibly could. But if you're coming to shul, if you're coming to Rosh Hashanah with filthy thoughts in your mind, guess what? In Shemai, like, where's that stench coming from? Where is this stench coming from? Oh, it's seat number 15. What, did he kill somebody and eat him? What did he do here? Why? Where's this stench? No, that's because he's still thinking about the girl from Thursday. Rabotai Karim, the Chachamim are telling us that when a person has filthy thoughts, they must remove them immediately. Just like they would remove physical filth without leaving any record of it. Now, the Tzeitil Katan is not talking to criminals. The Tzeitil Katan, this is Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhinsk. He's talking to tzaddikim. He's talking to his talmidim. He's not talking to criminals. Certainly, criminals can learn from it. But he's also talking to people that are not bringing this stuff to themselves on a daily basis. In fact, he's talking to people that are already protecting their brit, already protecting their mouth. They're not saying any lashon hara. They're not making up any rumors. They're not showing any ungratefulness. They're not looking at things that are not modest intentionally. No, they're trying to protect themselves. But what can you do that sometimes in the middle of prayer, all of a sudden some filthy thought comes up? What can you do that on the way to shul, on the way to work, somebody forgot to wear their clothes and they happen to be on your path of vision? And now this vision is in your mind. So what do? Why is Hashem doing this to me, Rabbi? You know how many times I heard this? Little tzaddikim trying to do tshuva, really protecting themselves. 6 months, 8 months, 9 months into it. Sometimes 2-3 years into it. They get disappointed that they have one of these dreams, they have one of these visions. And they cry out and say, why is God doing this to me? I'm doing tshuva. And of course, part of the guidance is to explain to them that this is a necessary part. But now I'm going to tell you something that if you're new, this doesn't really apply to you. Why? You have to already be in the process of tshuva, where you've abandoned the sin, you've committed not to sin anymore. You're doing tshuva for a little while before this part really applies to you. But needless to say, it's good to know. Because if you are going to do tshuva, this will eventually apply to you. The Sifrei Kabbalah teach something extraordinary. If you remember, we talked about the klipa. The klipa is the side of sins, the filth, the spiritual filth. Now, the Zohar Kadosh talks about how there are certain special neshamot that were captured by the Satan. Rav Chaim Kachlon Shichyeh said this part of the drasha at my Shiva Brachot years ago, where he says there were special neshamot, the Zohar says, that the Satan was permitted to capture. the neshama of David HaMelech, the neshama of Rabbi Akiva, Ruth, even Esav, Yitro, special people. The Satan had their souls as prisoners. And when they came to the world, they had the opportunity to either be the worst people in the world or the best. When they chose the worst, that was Esav. That was Ruth's sister, Orpah, who married 100 men and brought to the world Goliath. On the other hand, when they chose the right, they chose the truth, they chose the Torah, it became Ruth, the grandmother of David HaMelech, the grandmother of Mashiach, became David HaMelech, became Yitro, it became Rabbi Akiva. And just like the Sitra Achra has special souls as prisoners, it also has sparks of Kedusha, sparks of holiness as prisoners. Something happened along the way throughout history where a spark of Kedusha was left and captured by the Sitra Achra. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you so much, He's given you an opportunity to save it. How? That spark of Kedusha, there are sparks of Kedushas all over the world. Chachamim say that the reason why Am Yisrael went to Egypt wasn't only in order to soften the nation, but also for them to collect sparks of Kedusha that were in Egypt. The reason why we're in the exile in the four corners of the world is to collect sparks of Kedusha from all over the world. But there are also sparks of Kedusha within each and every single person. How much? Depends on the level of the neshama. The higher the level of neshama, meaning the higher the potential, the more sparks of Kedusha are within them. But they're all prisoners. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give you an opportunity to save it. How can you save it? When you're already doing tshuva, Rabotai Yekarim, you've decided the sages are right. You decided that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right. You decided the Torah is right, and I'm going to listen to it. I'm not going to watch movies. I'm not going to listen to filthy music. I'm not going to say filthy things. I'm not going to say any lies. I'm not going to be dishonest in my business. I'm not going to cheat on my wife. I'm not going to cheat on my husband. I'm not going to cheat in business. I'm going to do tshuva. I'm going to do everything I need to do in order to serve Hashem. Starting with Kedusha. Now when a person starts doing tshuva, it's hard in the beginning. Why? They have to adjust their life. They have to adjust what they look at. They have to adjust what they think. They have to adjust what they listen to. They have to adjust who they talk to, and so on and so forth. But the process is successful. And little by little, they get better and better. Little by little, they get better and better. Little by little, they get better and better. But then all of a sudden, after they're doing great, after they no longer think of any of this filth anymore, they're not watching anything for months, for years, nothing. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he may even be in the middle of praying. He may even be in the middle of just simply drinking coffee in the morning. Out of nowhere, the filthiest possible thought enters his mind. Or, worse yet, a bigger klipa. He walks into his office. He's used to working with blue-collar people. Everyone looks like they're sleeping inside an engine. There's nothing attractive about anything. Even the women that work in the company look like a motor. Nothing. All of a sudden, somebody tells him, "Can you do me a favor? Can you watch the register for a few minutes? I'm going to I'm going to, take care of the body. And he's at the register, used to looking at mufflers, looking at motors, looking at oil, looking at things that are just part of the world. All of a sudden, the klipa of all klipa comes in, and she wants his attention. She wants to be a customer. She also wants, maybe he'll get her a coffee too. She's giving him attention. Rabotai Karim, the klipa appears in multiple places. Sometimes it's in your mind. Sometimes it's in front of your eyes. That klipa is the greatest opportunity you possibly have. Why? The holy books teach us that test, that klipa, is actually the spark of kedusha screaming out. Like, when somebody is in the middle of nowhere, but they have one of these little guns where they shoot it into the air. It's like a firework. They have it on ships. They have it on, people that travel in the woods and so on. They want to get the attention. They shoot this thing into the air. Hopefully somebody sees them and sees that they're alive. That's what's happening right there. The spark of Kedusha that's within you is shooting out into the sky, hopes that you can see him. Says, I'm a prisoner, please free me. How can you free it? Pass the test. Pass the test. Don't look at the klipa. Don't think about the klipa. Remove any thought whatsoever about any of these filthy thoughts. Thinking words of Torah. Thinking the words of the sages. Thinking only good things. If the klipa is in front of you, don't look at her. Cash register, thank you. Go back to your position wherever it is in some muffler. Do not deal, do not be nice, do not be nothing. Simply professional, thank you very much while looking at down, the end. Oh, but how come you're not looking at me? Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, gotta go. The end. Why? That's the test. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you the opportunity to pass the ultimate test. How? The klipa has taken a spark of kedusha prisoner. It's inside you. But you can free it if you simply pass the test. If you pass the test, the kedusha is freed. And now it's yours. Now, your learning changes completely. Your understanding changes completely. Your mind changes completely. Everything changes. Why? You now have a new level of kedusha that you never had before. Baruch Hashem, throughout the years, we've had many of these sparks. Many of these sparks come from different klipot. I remember one time that 2 klipot showed up to a shiur Torah. 2 klipot. We had a shiur Torah. Everybody respected the shiur Torah. I told people, men and women are allowed to come, no problem, as long as there's modesty and the men and the women sit separately. And Baruch Hashem, we gave these live shulim every week, a few times a week. But of course, one time, we're giving a shiur Torah. I believe it may have been in the series of Igeret Ramban. And 2 guys that don't usually come to the shiur, but live in the area, decided to bring 2 klipot from some prostitution house, perhaps, to the shiur Torah. And of course, as they entered late, and as they entered, I saw all of the audience, everybody that was there, men, women, I think even the cockroaches were looking. Only one person wasn't looking because I was looking at the people. I saw the klipa is there, you can't look anymore. But at that moment, I knew that the test is not just for them, it's for me. More than anybody me, because I'm the one that's in front. So the shiur had to change. I think we were talking about emunah, bitachon. We were talking about all types of nice things, some stories. That's what was prepared for that shiur. But at that moment, when those 2 klipot came to the shiur and I saw everybody looking, I knew that there's only one way I can save everybody. There's one way. How? We're going to the grave. And at that moment started the shiur of chibut akever. That's when we started talking about what happens to a person, especially immodest women, in the grave, when all of the maggots eat them up and turn them up into nothing. All of a sudden, everyone was looking at me. And for the rest of the shiur, they continued looking at me. By the end of the shiur, the klipot ran out as fast as possible without even saying goodbye with their boyfriends that were klipah like them, and everybody got strength. Why? Because that was what was necessary. These types of klipot appear in different places at different times. You're not alone when the klipah shows up at your shop. You're not alone when the klipah shows up in your mind. You're not alone. But that's your opportunity. That's your opportunity. You pass the test, you get the kedusha that klipah has hostage. You get the kedusha that klipah has hostage. Now, Rabotai, we have to delve even deeper to understand why is the thought of sin worse than the sin. Why is looking and enjoying the creation of the Creator, why is it so bad? We're going to go to the commentary of Rabbeinu Bachya, not to be confused with Rabbeinu Bechaye. Rabbeinu Bechaye is Chovot HaLevavot nearly 1,000 years ago. Rabbeinu Bachya is just a few hundred years ago. Rabbeinu Bachya on this week's parasha, in chapter 29, there is a scary statement by Kadosh Baruch Hu, where Hashem says, I will not forgive him. There's a person, Hashem says, I won't forgive him. Who is this person? A person that says, Shalom yeli, ubeshriut libi elech. Peace will be upon me as I walk, as my heart sees fit. Where he says to himself that in spite of the fact that he doesn't accept any part of the Torah which doesn't appeal to him, he won't be punished. Seeing that he's only an individual, his actions are not relevant to the vast majority of his fellow Jews who are observant. Meaning he's saying, listen, I understand that you're saying to keep Shabbat, you're saying to protect your beat, you're saying all these things, I get it. Jewish people, religious, you're supposed to do it. Listen, for me, I don't want to do it. But Hashem's not going to punish me. He understands me. He understands that it's tough for me. He understands that I'm young. He understands that I don't feel like it. Whatever it is. And Hashem's not going to punish me. Hashem says, I'm that person that says, I'll do what I want, and Hashem's not going to punish me. Hashem says, him, I will never forgive. I won't forgive him. If he dies that way, I won't forgive him. He goes to Gehinnom and doesn't come out. Not just for the sins he made, for that alone, for that heretical thought that he lived with, not just thought one time, that he lived that way, that I'm going to do what I want and Hashem's not going to punish me, that, Hashem says, I will never forgive him. And Rabbeinu Bachya says, the wicked person prides himself with his evil deeds and determines to continue in his evil ways, thereby adding more thirst to his whole system, which previously was adequately supplied with moisture. He had hoped to become satiated by indulging his cravings for sin. His punishment consists of the fact that instead of deriving satisfaction from his sins, he constantly feels the irrepressible urge to commit more and more sins. Instead of slaking his thirst for whatever it is he wishes to achieve, he will find that he gets even thirstier. He says that part of the punishment for this person It says, I'll do whatever I want, is he'll actually see that he will crave more sins even after thinking that he satiated himself. Meaning part of the punishment is Hashem is going to allow him to make even more sins because he's now going to thirst more sins. And then Rabbeinu Bachya says further, more applicable to what we were thinking about before, about the thoughts of sin being worse than the sin. It says, as the sages say in Masechet Yoma, that the thoughts of sin are worse than the sin. What they had in mind when they said that contemplation of the sin is more serious offense than the actual carrying out of the sin, is that the sinful thoughts, when they're carried out, they leave their mark on the body of a person, whereas spontaneously committed sins do not leave such a mark on a body. Contamination of the soul by entertaining these sinful thoughts is therefore a more serious offense than the actual spontaneous commission of sin, which had not previously had such an impact on the soul. So the first thing that it says is what we already know, which is that when a person thinks of a sin, that makes a certain damage on the soul because it doesn't just go away. Whereas a person makes a physical sin, once he finished the physical sin, it's finished. But there's further. If there was a person that entertained the thought of breaking into somebody's house, if he's contemplating this sin, instead of spontaneously stealing, he most likely weighs what action he's going to take if his plan encounters opposition. He'll think about how to deal with the opposition. If somebody goes into the house, he wants to take what's in the safe, but all of a sudden the owner comes into the house, or the owner really is still there. What is he going to do? Is he going to run? Is he going to hit him? Is he going to do? He says he's going to start thinking all types of possibility, possibly even thinking that he's going to kill the guy if the guy's there. Because the guy's going to ruin his plan. And thus, in his mind, he already adds further sinful thoughts before even committing the original sin. And should a person ask, wait a minute, hold on a second, how can the Torah decree penalties for thoughts that never actually happened? How can the Torah expect a person to be so perfect that the temptation and intention to commit a sin never occurs to him? He says, let me explain. We know that a man is in charge of his choice, of what actions he's going to carry out. And this is what the Torah said in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 15 through 19, where Hashem says, this is actually this week's parasha, see, I have today given into your hand, control over life and goodness, over death and evil. You shall choose life. Just as man can control his actions, he can also control his thoughts. True, the latter requires some preparation, some education, and we are thereby commanded to entertain constructive thoughts and to avoid thinking potentially destructive, sinful thoughts. Hashem gives credit for our entertaining positive, constructive thoughts, whereas he punishes us for thinking sinful thoughts. And if on the occasion a person entertains unworthy thoughts, which creep up on a person uninvited, such as thoughts that reflect the fact that the individual in question has not trained himself sufficiently not to entertain unworthy, potentially sinful thoughts, the only cure for this is to concentrate on Hashem and what he expects us to do and how he expects us to relate to his universe and our environment. One must relate to such unworthy thoughts with anger at oneself, for such thoughts to have occurred at one at all. If he does that, then he may rely on the saying of our sages that Abali ter mesayinoto, that a person that comes and makes a genuine effort to purify himself, he receives divine assistance. That's what the Gemara says, Masechet Yoma, page 38. And there are numerous verses in the Torah testifying to this principle. The Rambam added to all of this. So before we go into the Rambam, just to explain, what Rabbeinu Bachya is saying is that, yes, there are going to be temptations. And Hashem is the one that's sending it your way. Now, if a person makes a sin, superficial sin, he takes the apple, it's not his, puts it in his pocket, runs away. That creates a certain amount of damage. But if he starts thinking of how I'm going to rob the store, I'm going to go here, I'm going to break the lock, I'm going to come at night, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then he's going to start thinking of an action plan. What happens if there's opposition? If the guy is in the store, what am I going to do? I'm going to punch him, I'm going to kill him, I'm going to do this. He starts thinking of other sins even though it's all in his mind. Needless to say, when it's thoughts of immorality. So even though you haven't committed the sin yet of stealing, of immorality itself, you did make a sin of allowing yourself to think about these things. Why? Instead of thinking about all of these sins, you were supposed to train your mind with thoughts of Torah that does not allow you to delve into these things. Instead of thinking about hurting somebody, you're supposed to think about how much you're supposed to love your fellow. Instead of thinking about stealing from somebody, you're supposed to think about how you can give more tzedakah. Instead of thinking about immorality, you should think about loyalty you're supposed to have for your spouse. Loyalty you're supposed to have to Hashem. Loyalty to the Brit Kodesh that you're supposed to have. If a person learns Torah, they're supposed to delve into those thoughts of Torah at all times and never allow themselves to think of these filthy things. And therefore, if you are thinking of the filthy things, that means that's you. That means that's you. Close your eyes. What do you think about? What do you see? If you're seeing filthy things, that's you. That's who you are. That's what's in your mind. Filth. Whose fault is it? It's your fault. But you could fix it. How? Replace the filth with Torah. Yeah, but I've been studying for a few months and it's still not replaced. Of course it's not replaced. You've been thinking of filth for 20, 30 years. You want it to be replaced in 2 months? Takes time. But the point is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us this is part of your servitude in this world. Not just act right, think right. And thinking right requires mental exercise. And therefore the Rambam says, which Rabbeinu Bachya is quoting here, and he explains the statement that the thoughts of sin are worse than a sin, saying that the ability to entertain thoughts is one of the major factors elevating man over the beasts, over the behemah. And therefore, abusing such a faculty is more serious than committing the sins with the body, something we have common with the animals, who are also lower forms of life. Perverting the very distinctive feature given to us by the Almighty by contemplating actions aimed against our Creator is indeed an unforgivable abuse of the powers granted to us by turning the dominating element of His personality into a tool to commit sins. The subservient part of man, his body, will automatically tend to become corrupted. And when someone commits a sin using his instrument, a foolish slave, using his instrument as a foolish slave, this is not nearly as serious as when one uses a free man to carry out one's nefarious schemes. This is what Maimonides wrote at the beginning of Moreh Nevuchim. This is actually in the third segment of Moreh Nevuchim, chapter 8. So what the Rambam is saying is that what separates you from an animal? You eat, it eats. You procreate, it procreates. You go to the bathroom, it goes to the bathroom. You go to sleep, it goes to sleep. You work, the animal works too. What's the difference? The difference is your mind. Your mind, that's the difference. But if you have only physicality, materialism, the acts of the beast in your mind, then not only are you acting like an animal and are not distinguishing yourself from the animal, but you're actually desecrating the one tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you to distinguish you from the animal. You're taking the gift that Creator gave you and you're throwing it in the filth. Saying, should have created me a dog. Should have created me as a cow, as a bull, as a horse. Because there's no difference between us. And what makes that so bad, when it's a thought rather than the sin itself, the Rambam really puts things into perspective. He says, if a person makes a sin, he steals, he acts immorally, physically, horrible thing. But here, he's sinning in front of another servant. He's sinning in front of another servant. Everyone sees him. Okay, yeah, he did this. He's a loser. He's ugly. He's this. He's the ugly person and so on. But everyone sees it. He doesn't care. He's a servant. He's sinning in front of other servants. But when he sins in his mind, when he's thinking about filthy thoughts, who sees those thoughts? The other servants? No. The people he's thinking about? No. Who sees it? The King of Kings. The King of Kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the only one that sees it. And therefore, says the Rambam, sinning in front of the other slaves, in front of the other servants, in front of the other animals. Okay, that's one thing. It's not good, but it's not a special attack against the king. But sinning in front of the king and the king only, there's nothing more disrespectful than that. There's nothing more disrespectful than that. And to put things into perspective, my son, God bless him, told me this. He said one of these books brings the stories of the Gemara. One of these idol worshippers came to Rabban Gamliel. And he says to him, this God of yours, if he doesn't like idolatry, why don't he punish the idols? Why is he punishing people? So Rabban Gamliel, that his wisdom was beyond comprehension, says, let me show you in a parable. He says, imagine there's a king. And the king has a son. He only has one son. And the son buys a dog. And he decides to call the dog the name of the king, after his father. What do you think of that, Mr. Idol Worshipper? Oh, no, that kid made a big mistake. Horrible. Terrible. How could he do such a thing to the king, to the father? So Rabban Gamliel says, exactly. So, should the father punish the dog? No, says the idol worshiper. Of course not. The dog didn't do anything. It's his son he should be mad at. He says, that's exactly your answer. The idol is a dog. He didn't do anything. It's the idol worshiper. That's who Hashem punishes. And of course, the idol worshiper didn't really like that Rabban Gamliel called his idol a dog. But the point being here is, Rabotai, when a person violates his mind and allows his mind to think about nonsense, think about shtuyot, think about things that are against the Torah, that's a crime against Hashem. And therefore, says Rabbi Elimelech Milizhinsk, knowing that we are human, knowing that we will fail, knowing that we will make mistakes, tells us, just because you made a mistake doesn't mean you have to keep repeating it. The moment it enters your mind, fight it, tooth and nail, to get it out of your mind. Now, how can you fight such a thing? Pure thoughts of Torah, Rabotai. The only way to fight filthy thoughts is with pure thoughts of Torah. And when a person starts to think of different parts of the Torah that they've learned, they'll be able to overcome the filth. The Rambam says that inappropriate thoughts only enter a mind and only exist in a heart that's devoid of Torah. And this is not some Musar book. This is what the Rambam Paskin LaHalacha in Ilchot Isurei Be'at, chapter 22, halacha number 20. And the Shulchan Aruch in Even Ezer, chapter 25, halacha number 1. Meaning, if you're thinking of inappropriate things, it's only because you haven't learned enough Torah. In the sefer ALL, he writes that a person who studied the weekly Torah portion each day with Rashi commentary will certainly be saved from committing any serious sin that day. And if a person wants extra help to fight what's in his mind, he should do kiruv, help other people do tshuva for these types of sins, his struggles. Talking to your friends about the spiritual struggles, giving them encouragement to do tshuva. This is one of the ways that the Likutei Etzot writes that you can actually fight those thoughts. Giving tzedakah also rectifies the nocturnal emissions. And for many of you that have asked about the Tikkun HaKlali, for whatever reason or another, many people think that Tikkun HaKlali fixes everything. It's not true. In fact, if you look at the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in Likutei Etzot, section 68, it says, a person who experiences a nocturnal emission should recite the following 10 Psalms on the same day. And he gives this Psalm 16, 32, 41, 42, 59, 77, 90, 105, 137, 150. One who recites these Psalms on the same day needs have no further fear about the harm such an emission can cause. Any damage will certainly be repaired through this. It's a very great tikkun. Meaning that this Tikkun HaKlali is not for intentional wasting seed, but rather if somebody's already doing tshuva, already fixing his mind, fixing his body, doing tshuva across the board, but still failed along the way where he had a dream he shouldn't have had. To fix that, you can use Tikkun HaKlali. To inspire your heart to want to do more tshuva, you can use Tikkun HaKlali. But if you're continuously sinning, Tikkun HaKlali is going to do nothing for you. Tikkun HaKlali is to help somebody that's already in the process of tshuva or somebody that needs more inspiration to do tshuva. To inspire you to do it. It's not tshuva itself. Of course, other things that help. Saying Amen Yeshem Merabah when you pray with Minyan. To Kaddish. Being very careful with Ilchot Shabbat. Concentrating on the song of the sea. If somebody insults you to your face, being silent, not responding, in fact, even rejoicing in your suffering. And lastly, says Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum in Anagot Tzadikim, listening eagerly to Shiurei Torah that speak to your heart, private or personal. Listen to Shiurei Torah helps. Now, a person that wants to clean up their mind needs to know what it looks like. And who could we look at other than our tzaddikim? What did their life look like? What does a clean mind look like? Rav Shach, Rav Elazar Menachem Shach, Alav Shalom, is Kodesh Kodeshim, always delving in Torah over and over again. These stories that I'm going to tell you are well known. There's so many more of them that weren't even written because everybody was used to this already. One day, Rav Shach walks into the yeshiva of over 1,000 bachurim that he has with a little girl. And he goes right to his shtender and starts studying. So all of his students thought that he brought his granddaughter. And they come to the rabbi, oh rabbi, wow, she's so cute. We didn't know the rabbi had such a granddaughter. And he looks at him, what are you talking about? And then he looks down at his head and goes, oh, he didn't realize. Well, what happened, Rabbi? Oh, no, I was coming to the Bet Midrash, and this little girl asked me if I could help her cross the street. So I helped her cross the street, and I started thinking about Torah again. And I forgot that I'm holding her hand. I walked her all over here, and she's still with me. Meaning he was delved into so much Torah, he forgot that he's holding a little kid. Another story is, somebody came to the Rav Shach, asking him for advice. He said, Rabbi, I need advice. My chatan, my daughter's husband, he learned with the Rav, and he's a good boy, but he wants to start doing kiruv. And I'm scared if he's going to go from just learning Torah to go out there and doing kiruv, maybe he's going to fall from the level of Torah that he's at. And the Rav says, well, it's not true. If he goes and he does, he's not necessarily. Just because you're not in the Bet Midrash all the time doesn't mean you're going to fall from the Torah. He says, yeah, but he's not like the rabbi. If he had a clean mind like the rabbi, holy mind like the rabbi, then I know. So Rav Shach says, well, how do you know I have such a holy mind? You don't know me. He says, well, I don't know the rabbi, but I know I can tell you what happened. One time, apparently, your rabbanit sent you to the store to buy cucumbers. And you went and you bought cucumbers, and you started walking, and I was right behind you, and you didn't realize that there was a hole in the bag. And you were walking all the way home, and the cucumbers were falling out of the bag, and you didn't even notice. I noticed. I had a bag on me. I started putting them in the bag. And I wanted to see how long it's going to take the rabbi to actually realize that the cucumbers are falling from the bag. And you didn't realize until you got to the house. Your bag was completely empty. And I told you, Rabbi, here's your cucumbers. You dropped them. If my chatan had a mind that's delving in Torah like yours, I'd feel safer. Last story is one time a Rav Shach comes into the Bet Midrash like this, walking like this. Of course, the Bachurim thought maybe the rabbi hurt himself. What happened to his arms? And he started to learn. And the guy that comes to him said, Rabbi, you okay? And he realized, well, yeah, sure. Rabbi, what happened to your arms? Oh, no, I forgot him that way. What happened? Oh no, the Rabbanit sent me to go get watermelons. And I had watermelons on my arms. And then I started thinking about Torah. And I go to the Bet Midrash all the time. So I guess I dropped the watermelons. He still has the watermelons on his arms. Now, these stories may sound like delirious. No, it's just a clean mind can literally get to a point where a person only thinks about Hashem at all times. They came to Rav Kanievsky, some religious people that were in the government, with someone that was up for election, some chief of police. And he was supposed to win some election. And they came to Rav Kanievsky, asking him for a blessing to be the winner of this election. And Rav Kanievsky was not giving him a blessing. And they kept talking, and he's not giving him a blessing. And then all of a sudden, Rav Kanievsky says to the guy, are you a Kohen, by the way? No, not a Kohen. So then they say, okay, well, it's not a Kohen, but can you give him a blessing? He doesn't give him a blessing. Eventually he says, bua, and that's it. No special thing. No one understood why the rabbi didn't give this special blessing they were hoping for. It seemed like this guy was going to be good for the elections, for the religious people, but they realized a couple of weeks later, when the winner of the election was not the guy that they wanted, but rather somebody that was a Kohen. Meaning that the mind of Rav Kanievsky was very different. We pray to remember Torah. We pray for Hashem to help us with more Torah, with more good things. He prayed for Hashem to help him forget everything that's not Torah. Meaning, all he wanted is to have Torah. And therefore, when your mind is so clean, to the point where there's just Torah in it, literally it can be elevated to a point where Hashem allows you to see certain things where you're a Kohen, oh what? Because the winner of that election is a Kohen. So what's the question? Why do you want a blessing? The winner is a Kohen. If you're not a Kohen, then obviously you're not a winner. People would come to him for blessings that would come, multiple times. You wouldn't remember who they were. Why? Because again, if they weren't part of the Torah, you wouldn't remember it. How would he remember? Oh no, but I was the one that wrote the book. Oh, he would call people by the name of the book, not their name. Meaning, Rabotai Karim, that a person can elevate themselves to very, very lofty levels. Now again, the stories of the tzaddikim, Rav Shach, Rav Kanievsky, all of these great tzaddikim is not necessarily where one should aim for tomorrow. What I'm telling you is, you need to get better because the upside from where you are is extraordinary. You may not ever get to the level of even the shoe of the great sages. But guess what? You could still get better from where you are right now. You could still remove all the filth from your mind. You could still remove all of the adultery from your mind. You could still remove all of that garbage from your mind and benefit from it. And when it does show up along the way of your tshuva, you don't need to be so miserable anymore. Because if you pass the test, that means you get the gift. It means you get to enjoy the gift that Hashem wanted to give you all along. And Be'ezrat Hashem, Hashem will give us the opportunities to get gifts with the strength and the ability to actually acquire them and use them properly. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we're able to serve Him appropriately, both with our bodies and our mind, and prepare ourselves each and every day to serve Him even better than the day before. Anyone that wants to contribute and help in the campaign to help Am Yisrael, especially now, before the holidays, to sweeten the judgment that's coming up on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you can go to bhyk.org or bhrh.org, and you can donate over there to the campaign. There are nearly 30 testimonies of different donors that have seen miracles. We have new ones being sent to us over the last several days. We'll be publishing over the next day or so. Baruch Hashem, the donors of the past are donors of the present, but I think that there's a lot more that everyone can do. People always mention to me there are 61,000 subscribers on the English channel and 20,000 on the Spanish channel and 10,000 on the Portuguese channel. In so many words, there's over 100,000, maybe even 200,000 subscribers. If everyone did what they're able to do, we'd literally be able to feed not just 10,000 people, we'd be able to feed 1 million, 2 million people. This is the time to do it. This is the time where everybody has to contribute, because at the end of the day, when we ask Hashem to bless us, to forgive us, to protect us, and everything that's dear to us, and give us the things that we want, the things that we need, the miracles, the health, the marriage, the children, all of those things, we have to give Him a reason. And what better reason is there than showing that we also care about His kids? We also care about His Torah. We also care about doing tshuva. Thank you very much for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every one to have the merit to contribute and to help us serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu even more than we did before in the previous 10 years, and B'ezrat Hashem do it in a much bigger scale over the next 10 years. Kol tu bracha v'atzlacha.